Hello everyone, in this tutorial I will be showing you more about jQuery AJAX and how to use them. In particular, I will be showing you how can I retrieve an associative array back to JavaScript so that I can use it using jQuery. Alright, so let's begin. Take a look at this code. This code is written in PHP. Here is a very simple array that we have. This is an associative array. We have an array we called age. And here is our associative array. Peter is our index. Ben is an index. Joe is an index. And inside Peter, his age is 35. For Ben, he's 37. For Joe, he's 43. So this is an associative array. If you want to learn more about associative array, or if you forgot, go ahead and go to W3 Schools and look for PHP Associative Arrays. These are one of the many arrays that PHP has to offer. Associative arrays are very popular, so learning about associative arrays is very important. So let's go back to this PHP page. So here, simple enough, we have our array. And what we want to do, we want to find out the age of Peter. And how do we do that? We just have a simple echo that is calling upon our age variable, which is an array, and we're saying let's get the index of Peter, because once we get the index of Peter, we are going to get the value that the index is being stored upon. So age at index Peter will echo out age 35. Let's go ahead and run that and see what we get. So when we run it, it's instantly going to echo something out, and we are expecting it to be number 35. Great, it's 35. And just to be more clear, let's go ahead and find out how old Joe is. Refresh that page, and he's 43. There we go. So that's a little brief on associative arrays. So now we want to figure out how do we connect it back over to JavaScript once we do like AJAX get on it. So there's different ways to do it. One, we can say print r, and when we do a print r, it's basically just gonna print out all of this into its respective format that print r uses. And great, it's printing out an array. So now it's printing out an array. Let's go over to our user view. And inside our user view, it's just a PHP page that has a lot of HTML data into it. And we are using jQuery, so please make sure you have jQuery set up at the top. So let me go through what's going on here. Don't have that much line of code, but here inside the body, we have a button. And in this button, it has an attribute on click event. And when the user clicks on this button, it's going to go to the function called getData. And here, we have a function called getData. And inside getData, I instantly see that it's using jQuery because of the $sign. And it is using the getType function. And here, this is the URL. And here is the function in which if it's successful, it can allow us to return the data or the status of its execution. And here, within this function, Within this function, I am using jQuery to edit some HTML. So let's go ahead and find the ID called output. Here it is, ID output. And notice that it's an H3 heading tag. And what it's doing, it's taking the contents inside its HTML attribute and it is going to send in the data of whatever web service.php sends us back. Right? So let's go ahead and run that so it's more clear in our head. So we have a page with a button and it's tempting us to click on it, and let's go ahead and get the data. And beautiful, we got the data back. It looks exactly like this because this is our web service.php page. Great. So now, instead of printing it out in a plain string text like this, how can we utilize this more and allow JavaScript to basically utilize the data even more specifically? Well, what we could do, we could probably do a string regex and input it, but not so easy. Because what if I just wanted Peter's information? How would I do that? Well, I know how to do it in PHP, right? Because in PHP, this is how we do it. It's just the array name and then the index. As we had it before. So if I wanted just Peter's information, I would just do an echo and say age Peter. But in JavaScript, I know this is the data that's coming back. Can I just say data Peter? Will that work? Let's see what happens. Refresh the page and get data. Nothing happens. It doesn't work. So why doesn't it work? Well, because this is what is returning to us. It's returning us like, a PHP version of an array. So here, this data that's coming back to us, take out Peter, what this data that's coming back to us is from a PHP web application. And here we're just pretty much just printing out whatever it looks like. Well, lucky for us, PHP, running up the web services, it's doing a print R and it's just printing out the array in a string format. So when we're here inside our jQuery AJAX or jQuery JavaScript world, it's basically sending us syntax for PHP. But we don't want that. We want to be able to just kind of access the array as if we were kind of like in PHP, but we can't. Like if we make an array here, and we add in data, then we're able to access it. But what's different about this way is that this data that we're getting back to, it's in PHP form. So the question is, how do we convert the PHP form into something that JavaScript or jQuery can read? So now I will be showing you how to do that. So this is the PHP, what's returning to us in JavaScript. We want to convert this into basically a JavaScript array. And how should we do that? So if we go into our web services, instead of doing a print R, what we're gonna do is it's a really nice trick. We're gonna actually print out the data, but we are gonna print it out in a JavaScript friendly fashion. So we're gonna do an echo, and we are going to do a JSON decode, right? So we're using a JSON decode function, and we are sending it in the age array. And what this is going to do, it's going to basically take this PHP array, and it's going to print out, and it's going to return to us a friendly version of what it should look like in JavaScript. And once we get that friendly looking version, we're going to just basically echo it out. So now when we run webservices.php, oops. Sorry, it's not decode, it's encode. So we're going to encode this value into a JSON friendly format. And JSON is it's a simple way of like saying JavaScript. So now let's run it. And there. So now it's echoed us a friendly way that JavaScript can read. So this is basically what JavaScript reads. This is how we access associative arrays in JavaScript. So great. It's able to echo us out this friendly output that looks a lot different than the PHP output. So we have our PHP array, and we are going to encode it using a JSON format, and we're going to send in our array and just simply echo it out. Okay, so that's step one. Now the next step is we still need to like kind of decode it a little bit more. So what we want to do, we're still using this data, but now we want to say data equals JSON dot parse. And we're just basically, massaging the variable even more so that it is a lot more friendlier to use. So now, before we go ahead and output that, I want to show you a nice debugging way to figure out what's happening. Oops, console.log. And I am going to log the data, and I want to see what's going on. I'm going to refresh this page, and I'm going to hit get data. So I want to inspect the element. I'm going to go look at the console and see what it's logging to me. So I hit get data, and look what it's logging. So here, it's logging an object array that JavaScript is able to log and read and store into the necessary object that we normally would use in JavaScript to access arrays. If you notice, look at it. It's an object. It has an index of Ben, the value 37, Joe 43, Peter. So this is more like it. This is what we need to access the content. So now what we can do, whoops. I'm gonna leave that console there. It's nice to have. It's not bothering anyone. So now if I just wanted Peter, I could say data and Peter. So now what's gonna happen, it's just gonna store the data of Peter into my output h3 HTML element. Save it, and I'm gonna rerun this. And Peter's information, he's 35. Peter, 35. Great. So if I hit get data, I should get a result 35 back. Great, 35. So now, right here, what we did with this data, we now have a more user-friendly JavaScript array that we can use that basically looks like how we should be accessing arrays in JavaScript. So what if I wanted Ben's info? So I would say Ben. So I'm accessing it because it's an associative array. Go back, refresh, get data. I got 37. Great. So what can I do to take this a step further? Instead of always having to change it here. Well, here, inside my get data function, I could type in, I could send it a name. And here, instead of manually doing it, I could just say name. So I could say name equals Ben. Will that still work? Refresh it, and yeah, it still works. So instead of typing it in here now, what I could do, I could have a text box. I could have a text box somewhere in this page, and it could allow me to write someone's name, and then hit get data, and then give me back the age. So here, I'm going to put a simple text box, input type text, and I'm going to give it an ID of name. So great, look, now I have a text box. Now, instead of having it here manually, what I could do, I could use jQuery to access the ID, name, and I could get the value. There. So I actually don't need this, because I'm not sending it anything in here, which is fine. So if we take that out, then we have to initialize it. So great. So now we're going to get the name val here, and then output its age. Get age. So let's refresh it. So we can type in the name now. 37. Peter. Let's get Peter. Whoops. Great. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It's a really simple way to use AJAX and how to incorporate using associative arrays from PHP, encoding it to something more JavaScript friendly, and parsing it into a much more readable format or object that JavaScript can use, and accessing it just like any old array. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Keep practicing and see you again.